Refuge Point looked exactly as it had 800 years ago. Empty space marked by the debris of ancient battles. Twisted metal from long-destroyed ships floated in the void. Silent monuments to sacrifice. The combined fleet arrived and took position exactly where Admiral Juan had made his last stand. The Indomitable sat at the center of the defensive formation, its scarred hull somehow proud despite the damage it had never fully repaired. 5 new Titan-class carriers surrounded it in a protective formation. Beyond them, hundreds of council ships formed concentric rings of defense. Fighter squadrons waited in their launch bays, pilots checking their systems one final time. On the Indomitable's bridge, Admiral Day stood at the command platform where Juan had stood centuries before. The bridge was fully crewed now, a mix of human and alien personnel working side by side. Commander Hayuk managed tactical coordination. Lieutenant Ara monitored the engineering systems. Harbinger's presence filled the ship's computers, its ancient wisdom merged with modern capabilities. All ships report ready, Yuk announced. Fighter squadrons are at launch standby. Weapon systems are hot. Captain Jiwan's voice came over the fleet communications from her position on the Soul's Pride. Battlecruiser divisions are in position. We are ready to engage. Velsera commanded a Trillian squadron on the outer defensive ring. Council forces acknowledge. Formation is holding steady. Day looked at the view screen showing empty space ahead of them. Somewhere out there, the Devourers were coming. Every sensor in the fleet was focused on the region of space where they would emerge from faster-than-light travel. Harbinger, Day said quietly. Are they still on the same course? Affirmative, Admiral. The Devourer fleet is approaching on predicted trajectory. Estimated time to arrival, 4 minutes 30 seconds, 4 minutes. Day looked around the bridge. Young faces and old, human and alien, all of them trained in tactics designed to keep them alive in the ugliest kind of warfare. All of them ready to hold the line. Fleet-wide communication, he ordered. All channels. Hyuk activated the system. Every ship in the fleet would hear the Admiral's words. This is Admiral Day to all vessels. 800 years ago, humans fought the Devourers at this exact location. Admiral Juan and 50,000 crew members sacrificed everything to save people they did not know, from species they had just met. They held the line so others could live. Today we stand where they stood. Today we fight together, human and Trillian, Astharian and human, all of us united by one simple truth. Sometimes the only way to win is to refuse to lose. The Devourers are coming. Let them. We will show them what happens when the galaxy stands together. We will show them why humanity holds the line. And we will show them that this time, we are not just humans fighting for aliens. We are one people, one fleet, one purpose. Hold the line. Across the fleet, crew members straightened in their seats. Weapons officers gripped their controls a little tighter. Fighter pilots whispered prayers in a dozen different languages. Sensors detecting emergent signatures, Harbinger announced. Devourer fleet entering normal space in 10 seconds. The view screen flared as massive shapes tore through the fabric of space. The Devourer ships were even more terrible than the ancient recordings had shown. Organic and mechanical fused into nightmarish forms. Their hulls seemed to absorb light, creating dark voids in space. Hundreds of them, more than the records had predicted. Fleet count, 347 capital ships, Harbinger reported. Thousands of smaller attack craft. Estimated total biomass over 2 million entities. Day felt his stomach tighten. The Devourers had brought more than they expected. Much more. All ships, hold formation, he ordered. Let them come to us. Harbinger. Identify command ships. The AI highlighted 12 large vessels at the center of the Devourer formation. Primary command nodes identified. However, historical data suggests they have distributed command structure. Destroying command nodes may have limited effect. We know, Day said. We are not trying to cut off their head. We are trying to overwhelm them with sheer firepower. All fleet, prepared to engage at maximum range. Fighter squadrons launch when ready. Launch bays across the fleet opened. Thousands of small craft streamed out, forming swarms around their carrier ships. The Devourers continued advancing, their formation spreading to envelop the defensive position. They are attempting to surround us, Hayuk observed. Let them, Day replied. We are not trying to escape. We are an anvil. Let them break themselves against us. All ships weapons free, fire at will. The battle began. The fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy weapons and kinetic projectiles filled the space between the fleets. The Devourers returned fire with biological weapons that seemed to grow and adapt as they traveled. The first impacts showed the difference immediately. Council ships using only their original systems took devastating damage from direct hits. Their energy shields overloaded quickly against the adaptive Devourer weapons, but ships with human redundancy systems survived. When shields failed, layered armor absorbed the attacks. When weapons were damaged, backup systems engaged. Ships that should have been destroyed kept fighting. Devourer attack patterns are adapting, Harbinger warned. They are learning our firing solutions. All squadrons, switch to pattern Chaos 7, Day ordered. Randomize your attack vectors. No coordination. Make them unable to predict. The neat formations dissolved. Ships began attacking independently, each choosing their own targets and approaches. It looked like complete disorder. The Devourers adapted to individual ships, but they could not adapt to the entire fleet acting without pattern. Fighter swarms engaged the Devourer attack craft. The alien pilots flew with the swarm tactics Jiwan had drilled into them. They overwhelmed enemy ships with numbers, accepting that some fighters would be lost to accomplish objectives. It was brutal. It was wasteful. It worked. Devourer capital ships are breaking through the outer defense ring, Hayek reported. Velsera's squadron is taking heavy damage. All reserve squadrons reinforce the breach, Day ordered. Do not let them collapse our formation. The battle descended into chaos. Ships from both sides burned. Debris filled space. The Devourers kept coming, wave after wave. But the defensive line held. 2 hours into the battle, Ara reported a problem. Admiral, the Indomitable's primary reactor is showing stress. We are not designed to maintain this level of output for extended periods. Can we compensate? Yes, but we will need to reduce power to non-essential systems. Shields will drop to 60%. Day made the decision instantly. Do it. We do not need shields if we do not let them through our armor. The Indomitable shuddered as several Devourer weapons struck its hull. The ancient armor held, barely, but it held. Devourer command ship is moving forward, Harbinger announced. It is targeting the Indomitable directly. On the view screen, the largest Devourer vessel pushed through its own fleet. It was massive, easily twice the size of the Indomitable. Its weapons glowed with terrible power as it charged. It wants to break our center, Hyuk said. If it destroys the Indomitable, the fleet formation will collapse. Day watched the enemy ship approach. Calculations ran through his mind. There was only one way to stop it. He opened a communication channel. Jiwan, I need the Soul's Pride to intercept that command ship. Ram it if necessary. There was a brief pause. Understood, Admiral. It has been an honor. Wait, Velsera's voice cut in. Admiral, my squadron is closer. We will intercept. Negative, Captain. Your ships are already damaged. You will not. That is exactly why we should do it, Velsera interrupted. Her voice was calm. Our ships are damaged but functional. That is what you taught us, Admiral. Damaged does not mean defeated. My squadron will ram that ship. We will hold the line, Day wanted to refuse, but he saw no other option. All ships provide covering fire for Captain Velsera's squadron. Make their approach count. 6 trillion cruisers, their hulls scorched and burning, turned toward the massive Devourer command ship. They accelerated to ramming speed. The rest of the fleet concentrated fire on the command ship's weapons, giving the cruisers a chance. Velsera's voice was steady as her ship approached. It has been an honor to learn from humans. You taught us that survival is not about perfection. It is about refusing to quit. Today we prove we learned the lesson. The 6 cruisers struck the Devourer command ship simultaneously. The explosion was visible across the entire battlefield. When the light cleared, the command ship was destroyed. The 6 trillion cruisers were gone. But the Devourer fleet faltered. Without their primary command node, their coordination broke down. Ships began attacking without pattern or purpose. All ships advance, Day ordered. Push them back. Break their fleet. The entire defensive formation moved forward for the first time. They pressed into the disorganized Devourer forces, using the momentum of Velsera's sacrifice. The battle turned. 2 more hours of brutal fighting followed. Ships on both sides continued to burn, but slowly, inevitably, the Devourer fleet began to retreat. They left behind thousands of destroyed craft and withdrew toward the edge of the system. Devourer fleet is breaking off, Harbinger confirmed. They are retreating to faster than light speeds. They are leaving. A cheer went up across the fleet communications. They had won. The training facility orbited a barren moon on the edge of Council space. Inside its massive halls, soldiers from 30 different species struggled with concepts that went against everything they had learned about warfare. Commander Hayek stood on an observation platform, watching a Trillion squadron practice formation flying. They moved with mathematical precision, each ship exactly where it should be. Perfect spacing, perfect timing. Completely wrong for fighting devourers. Again, he said into the communications system, break formation and swarm the target. The squadron commander's confusion was clear in his voice. But sir, we will hit each other. The optimal attack pattern requires... Optimal patterns do not work against devourers, Hayek interrupted. They learn. They adapt. If you attack the same way twice, you will die the second time. Swarm them. Overlap your fire. Except that some ships will take damage from friendly fire. Redundancy means you can absorb it. The squadron tried again. This time they abandoned their perfect formations and rushed the practice target like angry insects. Ships crossed paths dangerously close. Their weapons fire overlapped, creating a killing field of energy and projectiles. 3 ships sustained minor damage from friendly fire, but the target was destroyed in half the time of their previous attempt. Better, Hyuk said. Now do it again. And this time pretend 2 of your ships are already damaged. How do you compensate? Below him in another training hall, Lieutenant Era worked with Council engineers. They stood around a table covered with parts from human and Council ships. Ara held up a plasma conduit from a Council vessel. This is beautiful engineering, she said. Perfect energy flow, minimal power loss. But what happens when it gets damaged? A young Astharian engineer answered proudly. It has automatic repair systems. Nanobots seal any breach within seconds. Ara smiled. Good. And what if the nanobots run out? What if the power to the repair system is cut? What if you are 3 months into a campaign and replacement parts are 6 weeks away? The engineers looked at each other. None of them had an answer. Ara picked up a human power conduit. It was 3 times the size of the Council version, made of simple metal and ceramic. This is ugly, inefficient. It loses 15% more power than yours. But if it breaks, any crew member with basic tools can fix it. If it gets hit by weapons fire, it has 3 backup lines that automatically engage. If all 3 backups fail, there is a manual override that lets you run power through the emergency system. It is not perfect, but it works when everything else fails. She spent the next 2 hours showing them how to build redundancy into elegant systems, how to add manual overrides without destroying efficiency, how to make ships that could be repaired in the field instead of requiring shipyard facilities. In a tactical simulation room, Captain Ji-won ran Council officers through scenario after scenario. On the main display, red dots representing Devourer ships advanced against blue dots representing the Council fleet. Standard engagement, Ji-won said. Precision strikes to disable enemy ships. Minimal casualties. Quick victory. Execute. The Council officers moved their forces with practiced skill. They targeted Devourer command ships. They used coordinated strikes to maximize damage. Within minutes, they had destroyed half the enemy fleet. Then Ji-won added more red dots. The Devourers adapted. They learned your targeting priorities. They reinforced their command ships and spread their command structure. They are coming at you again. Same tactics will not work. What do? The officers tried variations of the same strategy. Each time Ji-won adjusted the enemy response. Within an hour, frustration showed on every face. This is impossible, one officer complained. They counter everything we try. Exactly, Ji-won said. She reset the simulation. Now watch how humans fought them. She loaded a different tactical program. The blue dots representing human ships did not use precision strikes. They swarmed. They overwhelmed enemy positions with sheer firepower. When the Devourers adapted, the humans changed their approach completely. Sometimes they scattered. Sometimes they grouped. Sometimes they sacrificed ships to draw the enemy into traps. We fought like chaos, Ji-won explained. We never used the same tactic twice. We were willing to take heavy losses to achieve objectives. We relied on numbers and redundancy instead of perfect execution. The Devourers could learn from our battles, but we changed faster than they could adapt. The officers watched in fascination as the simulation played out. The human forces lost twice as many ships as the Council tactics would have. But they won. Efficiency is your enemy against devourers, Jiwan continued. You must be willing to be wasteful, to be crude, to accept casualties that seem unacceptable, because the alternative is total defeat. Admiral Day visited each training facility personally. He walked through the halls, observing the sessions, speaking with instructors and students. He saw the frustration on council faces as they struggled with human doctrine. He also saw understanding beginning to dawn. At the end of one particularly difficult day, Velzera found him standing on an observation deck, looking at the stars. The Indomitable was visible in the distance, surrounded by the construction framework as crews worked to restore it fully. Your methods are difficult for my people to accept, she said quietly. We are taught from birth that efficiency is the highest virtue, that waste is shameful, that accepting preventable casualties is a failure of command. Day nodded. I understand. Humans thought that way once too. Then we met the Devourers and learned that sometimes the only way to win is to be willing to lose. How did you maintain morale? Velzera asked. How did you convince people to fight in a way that guaranteed high casualties? Day was silent for a long moment. We did not hide the truth from them. We told every crew member that they would probably die. We told them that human tactics meant accepting losses that would horrify other species. And then we gave them a choice. They could leave with honor or they could stay and hold the line. 95% stayed. He turned to face her. Do you know why? Because humans understand something that your people forgot during centuries of peace. Sometimes survival is not about being smart or efficient or advanced. Sometimes it is just about being too stubborn to quit. We held the line because we were too stupid to know we should run away. Velzera smiled slightly. I am beginning to think it was not stupidity. It was wisdom. Work continued around the clock. Council ships entered the retrofit facilities and emerged weeks later with additional armor plating, redundant systems, and manual backups. Their elegant lines were broken up by the additions, but their survival capabilities increased dramatically. The 12 mothballed human shipyards came fully online. Construction began on new Titan-class carriers using 800-year-old designs updated with modern materials. The new ships looked just as crude as the Indomitable, but they were built to last. Historian Taiyang worked with council archivists to restore the hidden records of the Silence War. The truth spread across the galaxy. Some species were ashamed their ancestors had hidden the human contribution. Others were grateful the records had been preserved. All of them learned from the tactical data. 3 months into the preparation, Admiral Day gathered the senior officers of both human and council forces. The meeting room held representatives from every major species in the galaxy. The diversity was remarkable, and it would have been impossible 800 years ago. We have 3 months left, Day said without preamble. The Devourers will arrive at the edge of council space. We will meet them at the same location where the Indomitable made its last stand. It seems appropriate. He pulled up a holographic display of the planned defense. At the center sat the Indomitable, fully restored, surrounded by 5 newly constructed Titan-class carriers. Around them were positioned hundreds of council ships, now retrofitted with human redundancy systems. Fighter squadrons numbering in the tens of thousands were ready to launch. This will not be like the battles you have studied in your academies, Day continued. This will be ugly, brutal. We will lose ships. We will lose people. But we will hold the line, just like humans did 800 years ago. Just like we have always done, Captain Jiwan stood. All personnel have been trained in human tactical doctrine. All ships have been retrofitted with redundancy systems. All squadrons have practiced swarm tactics until they can do them in their sleep. We are as ready as we can be, Hayek added his report. The Indomitable's Harbinger system has been networked with all fleet computers. It has 800 years of battle data against Devourers. It will coordinate our defense and suggest tactical adjustments in real time. Thexfar, attending via holographic projection, spoke for the council. I never thought I would see the day when the galaxy would adopt human military doctrine. But here we are. Admiral Day, the council formally places all military forces under your command. Bring us victory, Day saluted. We will hold the line. That is what humans do. As the meeting ended and officers dispersed to their assignments, Velzera approached Ara. Lieutenant, I have a question. When you look at the Indomitable now, do you still see a primitive ship? Ara looked at the image of the Supercarrier on a nearby display. I see a ship that survived 800 years and is ready to fight again. The council chamber filled quickly. Representatives from 30 different species gathered in the circular hall, their voices creating a buzz of confused conversation. Velsera stood at the central podium, her confidence shaken by the events of the past 2 days. On the massive view screen behind her, the image of the Indomitable hung in space. No longer did it look like a piece of scrap metal. Now, with its history known, the ancient supercarrier seemed almost majestic in its scarred armor and weathered hull. The chamber doors opened. Every head turned to watch as the human delegation entered. Admiral Day led them, his elderly frame still straight and commanding. His gray hair was cut military short, and his uniform bore more decorations than most species had wars. Behind him walked Captain Jiwan, younger and fierce-eyed, her hand never far from her sidearm. Historian Taeyang followed, carrying a data storage device that seemed far too small for the weight of its contents. "This is highly irregular," Chancellor Thexvar announced from his elevated seat. The council was not scheduled to meet for another month. Admiral Day walked to the center of the chamber without asking permission. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. "Chancellor, council members, we are here because you found something that belongs to humanity. Something sacred, and in the process you may have awakened a threat this galaxy barely survived once before." The chamber erupted in shouting. Multiple species demanded explanations. Others insisted that humans had no right to address the council in such a manner. Admiral Day simply stood there waiting for the noise to die down. Velsera stepped forward. "I invited the human delegation. They have information the council needs to hear. Information about the vessel we discovered and what it means." Thexvar gestured for silence. "Very well. Admiral, you may speak, but be brief." "Brief?" Dai's laugh was harsh. 800 years ago, this galaxy faced extinction. Your precursor civilizations were losing a war against an enemy that consumed everything in its path. Humanity arrived, saw what was happening, and chose to help. We built 12 supercarriers. We held a defensive line for 40 years. We lost millions of people. And when the war was won, you erased us from history. The chamber exploded in denial. Council members shouted that there were no records of such a war. That humanity only joined galactic society 2 centuries ago. That this was clearly a fabrication. Historian Taeyang stepped forward and connected his storage device to the chamber's main system. "These are the classified files from Earth's military archives. Files that have been sealed for 800 years. Files we kept because we knew someday someone would try to deny what happened." Images filled the view screen. Battle footage, ship logs, communications between human vessels and the alien civilizations they were defending, star charts showing the progression of the war, casualty reports that numbered in the millions. The council members went silent as they watched. The evidence was overwhelming. Ships bearing council precursor insignias fighting alongside crude human vessels. Desperate messages from alien commanders thanking human forces for their intervention. Footage of devourer ships tearing through elegant alien fleets only to be stopped by massed human firepower. "The war lasted 40 years, Taeyang said, his voice echoing in the quiet chamber. "Humanity built 12 Titan-class supercarriers. Each carried 50,000 personnel and 2,000 fighter craft. We positioned them in a defensive line we called the Iron Wall. When the Devourers came, we held them." He pulled up a specific battle record. "This is the Battle of Kelvin Star. 3 human supercarriers against a Devourer hive fleet. We lost 1 carrier entirely. 25,000 dead. But we held the line long enough for 2 million civilians to evacuate the system." Captain Jiwan spoke for the first time. "The Indomitable was lost at the Battle of Refuge Point. Admiral Wan and his crew sacrificed themselves to save colony ships carrying families from 6 different species. 50,000 humans died so that others could live, and you called their ship a piece of scrap metal?" Velsera looked down, unable to meet the captain's eyes. A Trillion Council member stood. "Even if this is true, why were these records not shared? Why does the Council have no knowledge of this war?" Admiral Day's smile was cold. "Because your ancestors were ashamed. They built perfect ships with perfect weapons. They prided themselves on their advanced technology, and they were losing to an enemy that adapted faster than they could innovate. Then primitive humans arrived with crude ships and simple weapons and turned the tide of the war. Your ancestors could not accept that they were saved by a species they considered beneath them, so they erased the records. They offered humanity a junior position in the council and told us to keep quiet, and we agreed because we were tired of fighting. But we kept the records, Taeyang added. We kept the ships in archives. We kept the training manuals and tactical doctrines, because we knew the Devourers might return, and now they have. He displayed the sensor data Harbinger had detected. This signature matches Devourer technology. It is distant but moving toward Council space. The fleet is approximately 3 times larger than the force we faced 800 years ago. The chamber erupted again. Some council members insisted the data must be wrong. Others demanded immediate military preparation. A few simply sat in stunned silence. A junior council member, a human named Rin, stood from her seat in the lower section. I have a question for the council. When you examined the Indomitable, what did your engineers think of its design? Thexavar frowned. It is primitive. Crude construction. Inefficient systems. Exactly, Rin said. You saw redundancy and called it primitive. You saw manual backups and called it crude. You saw physical armor instead of energy shields and called it inefficient. But let me ask you this. How many of your modern warships can take a direct hit to their main computer and continue fighting? Silence. How many of your ships can operate for months without resupply? How many can function when their power systems are damaged? How many can be repaired with basic tools by regular crew members instead of specialized technicians? More silence. Captain Jiwon smiled grimly. Your ships are perfect. Until something goes wrong, then they are useless. Our ships are designed to break and keep fighting. You build ships to win battles. We build ships to survive wars. Admiral Day walked closer to the Chancellor's platform. The Devourers are coming. Your perfect ships will not stop them. Your precision weapons will not save you. Your elegant tactics will fail against an enemy that adapts to everything you throw at them. You need what humanity has always had. Stubborn, ugly, crude survival. Thexvar stood, his multiple arms spreading wide. And what do you suggest, Admiral? That we abandon centuries of advancement and return to primitive designs? No, Day said. I suggest you learn from them. The Indomitable still functions after 800 years. Its reactor still has power. Its armor can still take hits that would destroy 3 of your modern cruisers. Its tactical doctrine was designed specifically to fight the Devourers. We kept 12 shipyards in reserve, mothballed but ready. We can build more Titan-class carriers, but only if you are willing to accept help from humans. A long silence filled the chamber. Council members looked at each other, centuries of pride warring with the reality of the threat they faced. Finally, a Asterian representative stood. How long would it take to retrofit our fleets with these redundancy systems? Taeyang consulted his data. For basic redundancy, 3 to 4 weeks per ship. For full implementation of human defensive doctrine, 3 months. And the Devourers? Thexavar asked quietly. How long until they arrive? Based on their current speed, Taeyang said 6 months. Maybe 7. The chamber was silent again. Then slowly council members began standing. One by one they voiced their agreement. Pride was one thing. Survival was another. Thexvar looked at Admiral Day for a long moment. Very well. Humanity will lead the defense. But know this, Admiral. If we survive this, there will be a reckoning for those who erased our history. Day nodded. We kept the records. We can show you everything your ancestors tried to hide. But first, we have a war to prepare for. As the council dispersed, Velsera approached D. Admiral, I apologize for mocking your ship. I did not understand what I was seeing. Day studied her. Most people do not. They see rust and crude welding and think it means we are backward. They do not see the philosophy behind it. We do not build things to be perfect. We build them to last. We build them to survive, because that is what humans do best. We survive. On the view screen, the Indomitable hung in space, its scarred hull now surrounded by repair ships and supply vessels. The old warrior was waking up for one more battle, and across human space, 12 mothballed shipyards began receiving activation orders. The galaxy needed more than elegance and perfection now. It needed the one thing humanity had never run out of, the stubborn will to survive. The emergency lights painted everything red. The salvage team stood frozen as more sections of the ancient ship came to life. Computer terminals blinked awake after centuries of sleep. Ventilation systems hummed and pushed air through dusty corridors. The ship was waking up. Velsera demanded answers over the communication system. Commander Hayuk, explain what is happening immediately. You said this is a human vessel? Hyuk moved through the bridge, his fingers dancing across control panels. Each touch brought more systems online. Yes, Captain. This is the UHNS Indomitable, United Humanity naval ship. It is a Titan-class supercarrier built during the first expansion period. The first expansion? Talavin consulted his database. There is nothing in Council records about human expansion 800 years ago. Humans only joined Galactic Society 200 years ago. That is because your records are incomplete, Hyuk said quietly. He pulled up a holographic display showing the ship's specifications. The Indomitable was commissioned 823 years ago. It carried a crew of 50,000 personnel and 2,000 fighter craft. The salvage team gasped. 50,000 crew members? On one ship? The numbers seemed absurd. Modern warships carried crews of a few hundred at most, with automation handling everything else. The Astharian engineer laughed nervously. 50,000? That is incredibly inefficient. Why would anyone need so many people? Ara answered before Hyuk could. Redundancy. If automation fails, you need people. If computer systems get damaged, you need people. If you are fighting a war of attrition, you need people. Valsera's voice crackled with irritation. A war? What war? There has been no major galactic conflict in over 1,000 years. Hyuk found what he was looking for in the ship's database. The Silence War. That is what we called it. He activated a holographic projector in the center of the bridge. Images appeared, showing massive battles between human ships and something else. Something terrible. The images showed creatures that were part organic and part machine. Their ships looked like they were grown rather than built. Dark, twisted things that absorbed light rather than reflected it. The salvage team watched in horror as the holograms showed these creatures tearing through fleets of ships. What are those things? Talavin whispered. We called them devourers, Hyuk said. They came from beyond the galactic rim. They consumed everything. Entire species disappeared. Whole planets were stripped clean of all organic matter. He pulled up more records. Star maps showed the progression of the devourer invasion. System after system fell. The maps showed civilizations the Council had never heard of, all marked as extinct. The precursor civilizations to your Council were losing, Hyuk continued. They were more advanced than the Devourers in many ways, but they could not stop them. The Devourers adapted too quickly. They learned from each battle and came back stronger. Valsera appeared on one of the view screens, her face tight with anger. This is ridiculous. If such a war happened, we would have records. We would know, would you? Ara asked. Or would you erase records that showed you needed help from primitives? The bridge went silent. The truth of her words hung heavy in the air. Hyuk pulled up another file. Humanity entered galactic space during the height of the war. We were new. We had just developed faster-than-light travel. We found civilizations burning. We found refugees fleeing the Devourers. And we did what humans do. We fought. The hologram showed human ships engaging Devourer fleets. The human vessels looked crude compared to the elegant alien ships, but they fought differently. They swarmed. They used overwhelming firepower. They took massive damage and kept fighting. Your ancestors were losing because you fought for efficiency, Hyuk explained. You built perfect ships with perfect weapons. When something went wrong, your ships failed. You fought for minimal casualties and quick victories. He gestured at the bridge around them. We built for survival. Every system has 3 backups. Every weapon has manual overrides. Every section can be sealed off and operate independently. We did not build ships to win battles. We built ships to survive wars. Talavin studied the data with growing fascination. But how did this help against the Devourers? Because we were too stupid to know we should lose, Ara said with a bitter smile. We kept fighting when any logical species would have retreated. We lost ships. We lost people. But we learned. And we held the line. Hyuk pulled up a final map. It showed 12 points of light forming a defensive line across space. The Iron Wall. 12 Titan-class supercarriers positioned to defend the inhabited galaxy. The Indomitable was one of them. For 40 years we held that line. 50,000 crew members per ship. 2,000 fighters per ship. When the Devourers came, we met them with numbers they could not overcome. The salvage team stared at the display. The scope of it was overwhelming. A war that lasted 4 decades. 12 massive ships crewed by hundreds of thousands of humans. Battles that consumed entire solar systems. A new voice suddenly filled the bridge. It came from the ship's speakers, synthetic but somehow warm. Preservation protocols active. Historical records accessed. Identifying current users. Human genetic markers confirmed. Welcome home, children of Terra. Everyone jumped. The ship's artificial intelligence was functioning. Who are you? Hyuk asked. I am Harbinger, the tactical intelligence system of the UHNS Indomitable. I have been dormant for 823 years, 4 months and 17 days. My last orders were to protect this vessel and wait for retrieval. What happened here? Hyuk asked softly. What happened to your crew? There was a pause. When Harbinger spoke again, there was something like sadness in its voice. Admiral Wan engaged a Devourer hive fleet in this sector. Civilian ships were evacuating. The Admiral ordered the Indomitable to hold position and provide cover. We sustained critical damage to 70% of our systems. Crew casualties exceeded 90%, but the civilians escaped. Admiral Wan gave the order to seal all surviving crew in escape pods and jettison them. He remained on the bridge with 200 volunteers. They piloted the ship manually to its final position and then shut down all non-essential systems to preserve power. The bridge was silent. The salvage team looked at each other, no longer smiling or mocking. The Admiral's last log entry is available, Harbinger said. Would you like to view it? Hyuk nodded. Yes, play it. A hologram materialized on the command platform. It showed a man in a torn uniform, blood on his face, exhaustion in his eyes. Admiral Wan looked directly at the camera. If someone is watching this, then we held the line long enough. The civilians made it out. That is all that matters. He coughed, and blood appeared on his hand. This ship carried 50,000 of the finest people I have ever known. They died doing their duty. They died so others could live. If you are human and you find this ship, remember them. If you are not human, then learn from this. We were not the strongest species. We were not the smartest. But we were the most stubborn. We held the line. We always hold the line. The hologram flickered and died. The bridge remained silent for a long moment. Delevin's voice was quiet. I apologize. I did not understand what I was looking at. Velsera's voice came over the communications, and for the first time, there was respect in her tone. Commander Hyuk, I believe we should withdraw from the ship. This is indeed a war grave. It should be treated with honor. Before anyone could respond, Harbinger spoke again. Warning. Detecting energy signatures consistent with Devourer technology. Distant. Faint. But identical to archived patterns. Updating threat assessment. Hyuk went cold. What did you just say? Devourer technology signature detected. Distance approximately 800 light-years. Direction. Toward the galactic core. They are returning. The salvage team looked at each other in horror. On the main view screen, Harbinger displayed sensor data. Something massive was moving at the edge of explored space, and it matched perfectly with the Devourer signatures in the ancient database. Hyuk activated his communication device. Captain Velsera, we have a serious problem, and you are going to need to call the Council immediately. The massive ship appeared on their sensors like a ghost from the past. Captain Velsera stood on the bridge of the Galactic Council flagship, staring at the enormous vessel floating dead in space. Her purple skin rippled with amusement as the scan results appeared on the main screen. What is that thing? She asked, her voice filled with mockery. It looks like someone welded scrap metal together and called it a warship. The bridge crew laughed. Science Officer Talevin moved closer to his console, his 3 eyes blinking rapidly as he read the data. Captain, the ship appears to be over 800 years old. The hull is made of simple iron alloys, very primitive construction. Velsera walked around her command chair, her long fingers tracing its edge. Primitive is being kind. Look at those weapon systems. Are those actual ballistic cannons? Who uses physical projectiles anymore? More laughter echoed through the bridge. Even the junior officers joined in, pointing at various parts of the ancient vessel on their displays. The ship was massive, easily 3 times the size of their flagship, but it looked like a relic from a museum. Rust covered much of its hull. Blast marks and holes dotted its surface. Exposed metal framework showed where armor plating had been torn away. Check the design database, Velsera ordered. What species built this floating disaster? Talevin worked his console for several minutes. His expression changed from amusement to confusion. Captain, there is no match in our records. This ship design does not exist in any known civilization's archive. Of course it doesn't, Velsera said, waving her hand dismissively. It probably belonged to some extinct species that died out because they were too stupid to advance beyond kinetic weapons. In the back of the bridge, Commander Hayek remained silent. The human liaison officer stood with his arms crossed, his face carefully blank. He watched the view screen intently, his dark eyes tracking every detail of the derelict vessel. Lieutenant Ara, standing beside Hayek, leaned closer and whispered, "Sir, that hull configuration looks familiar." Hyuk gave the smallest shake of his head. "Not here. Not now." Velzera turned to face them. "Commander Hayek, you have been very quiet. Does this wreck mean something to your people?" Hyuk met her gaze steadily. "I would need to examine it closer to be certain, Captain." "How wonderful." Velzera clapped her hands together. "The human wants to look at the primitive ship." "How appropriate." She gestured to Talavin. "Prepare a salvage team. We will strip this thing for parts. It will make an excellent museum piece. Something to show our children what happens when species refuse to evolve." Talavin organized the salvage team quickly. 12 specialists from various species gathered in the shuttle bay. Hyuk and Ara joined them, both carrying standard exploration gear. The other team members gave them sideways glances and whispered among themselves. The shuttle launched from the flagship and crossed the empty space toward the derelict. As they approached, Ara studied the hull through the shuttle's windows. "Sir, look at those impact patterns. They don't match deep space debris strikes." Hayek nodded slowly. "I see it. Those are weapon impacts. Very heavy weapons." The Trillian pilot overheard them. "Of course they are weapon impacts. This old trash probably got destroyed in some pointless war between primitives. That is what happens when species fight with bullets instead of plasma." The shuttle docked with an intact airlock on the derelict's port side. The team checked their suits and helmets before entering. The airlock still functioned, though it moved slowly and made grinding sounds. When the inner door opened, their lights cut through absolute darkness. They moved through corridors lined with exposed pipes and manual control panels. Everything was covered in dust and frost. The cold had preserved the ship perfectly. Talavin ran his scanner over a wall panel. "Fascinating. These control systems are entirely mechanical. No computer integration at all in the basic systems." A Astharian engineer laughed. "They probably did not trust computers. Like children afraid of technology they cannot understand." The team spread out through the ship. Hyuk and Ara moved toward what the ship's layout suggested was the command center. The corridors were wide, built for large numbers of crew moving quickly. Signs on the walls used strange symbols none of the salvage team recognized. They reached the bridge. It was enormous, designed to hold dozens of personnel. Command stations surrounded a central platform where the captain would have stood. View screens covered the forward wall, all dark and dead. Or so they thought. Ara's scanner beeped. "Sir, I'm picking up a faint power signature. Something is still active in this ship." Hayuk moved to the main console. He brushed away 800 years of dust, revealing a symbol etched into the metal. His breath caught in his throat. The symbol showed a blue planet with white clouds surrounded by Korean text. "This is impossible," he whispered. Talavin joined them, peering at the symbol. "What does it say?" "Can you read this language?" Before Hyuk could answer, the console flickered to life. Light spread across the bridge as emergency power systems activated automatically. Red emergency lights illuminated the space with an eerie glow. The main view screen sparked and then displayed static. The salvage team jumped back in surprise. Their communications filled with excited chatter. More systems throughout the ship began powering up, section by section. The temperature started rising as ancient heaters activated. Talavin's scanner went wild. "The reactor! The reactor core is active." But that should be impossible after 800 years. On the main view screen, the static cleared. A logo appeared, sharp and clear. The blue planet symbol filled the screen. Text scrolled beneath it in the strange script. Then in Galactic Standard, words appeared. "UHN's Indomitable, United Humanity Naval Ship, Titan-class Supercarrier." The bridge fell silent. Every member of the salvage team stared at the screen. The word humanity hung in the air like an accusation. Velzera's voice crackled over their communications. "What is happening? Why are the ship's systems activating?" Hyuk stepped closer to the console. His hands moved over the controls with practiced ease. He found a biometric scanner and pressed his palm against it. The scanner glowed green. "Access granted." A holographic display materialized above the console. It showed star charts, ship specifications, and crew rosters. All in Korean. All unmistakably human. Hyuk's voice was quiet but clear over the communications. Captain Velsera, this vessel is the UHNS Indomitable. It is a human warship. It is 823 years old. And it is my duty to inform you that you are standing inside a war grave. The salvage team looked at each other in shock. Humans, these primitives built this massive ship? It seemed impossible. The computer systems continued booting up. Deep in the ship, something mechanical began moving. A sound like metal grinding against metal echoed through the corridors. Then came footsteps, heavy mechanical footsteps. The salvage team's weapons came up instantly. Around the corner came machines, humanoid robots with weapons mounted on their arms. But they did not attack. They simply stood in the corridor, blocking the path back to the shuttle. A voice echoed through the ship's speakers. It spoke in Korean first, then translated to Galactic Standard. The voice was artificial but carried emotion. Hostile intent detected. Unknown life forms detected. Initiating preservation protocols. Sending distress beacon. Calling home. Calling Terra, calling Earth. Ara grabbed Hyuk's arm. Sir, if that beacon reaches Earth... I know, Hyuk said. They will come, and they will not be happy. On the view screen, a timer appeared. The distress beacon was transmitting. Across the galaxy, 800 light-years away, an ancient computer in a Seoul military museum suddenly woke up. Lights flickered on in empty halls. Screens displayed urgent messages. The beacon had been received. Earth was coming. And the Galactic Council was about to learn a very important lesson about underestimating humans.